Welcome to our channel, all friends. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe my channel and press the bell icon to stay update for new videos. Thanks. Let's start new video. I was in desperate need of money. My wife was very ill, and the doctor had said she needed a major operation. I needed money for her treatment, but there was no way I could arrange such a large amount. I didn't know what to do. I was just an ordinary school teacher, and in the evenings, I tutored children. However, I used to go to posh areas for tuition so I could earn a better salary. It was one such evening when I had just finished tutoring a child in the DHA area and stepped out of their house. Just then, a car sped out of the neighboring bungalow and stopped right next to me. Surprised, I paused instead of getting on my motorcycle and looked toward the black car. I had seen this car a few times before, so I had a rough idea that it belonged to someone living in that bungalow. The car window rolled down, and a woman around 35 years old looked at me and gestured for me to get into the car. I was caught in a dilemma. How could I just sit next to a stranger like that? Then a thought crossed my mind. Maybe she knew I was a tutor and wanted to talk about hiring me. I immediately walked around and got into the car. I needed the money, and I was also hoping to get more tuitions. Tuition jobs in DHA paid well, unlike other areas where the fees were very low. That's why I was eager to find more work in the same area so I could earn more from a single location. With that in mind, I thought it was wise to get into her car. The fashionably dressed woman looked me over from head to toe, a deep smile on her face. She asked softly, "Do you come here to teach?" I quickly nodded yes, my heart filled with hope that she would surely offer me some work, and in this way a part of my problem might be solved. A considerable amount was being spent daily on my wife's medication. On top of that, pressure from my mother was increasing. She wanted me to divorce my wife and send her back to her parents' house, telling me not to exhaust myself over her treatment. But my love for my wife wouldn't allow me to abandon her during this difficult time. We had been in love for many years, and I had married her after a lot of struggle. My mother had never approved of my choice. And now, after the marriage, things had turned in such a way that it had become easier for my mother to drive a wedge between us. She kept pushing me to divorce my wife, and I was struggling to explain to her that I simply couldn't do that. I had to find a way to help my wife recover, no matter what. That's why I was working day and night. The 35-year-old woman looked at me with her sharp, piercing gaze and said, "You seem to be in need. Is something troubling you?" At first, I stayed silent. Then slowly I said, "Yes, I am troubled. I need money, but teaching is both my passion and my profession, so I do my work with complete honesty." She replied, "Then I can help you." Hearing this, a faint smile appeared on my face. I immediately placed my hand over my chest and said, "Madam, if you need someone to tutor a child, I'm ready. Just tell me the time and day, and I'll be there." I assumed she might want me to tutor her child, as she looked like a married woman from her appearance. But she gently shook her head and said, "I don't have any children. That's why I can't hire you as a teacher. However, I can offer you another kind of job." Her words made me sit upright in surprise. I asked curiously, "What kind of job? I've only ever done school teaching. I don't have experience with any other type of work." She laughed out loud and said, "You're a young man, around 27 or 28. You look married, handsome, and strong. You won't need any training for this job. You'll manage just fine. You are married, right?" She looked at me questioningly, and I quickly nodded. "Yes. It's been a year since I got married." She said, "Think of it like this. Just as you teach with dedication, honesty, and passion, this job is similar. If you do it with the same sincerity and effort, you'll progress a lot. You'll be very successful, and I'll also take care of your financial needs." I immediately replied, "Yes, madam. If I'm capable, I'll definitely do your work." Actually, my wife is very ill. After marriage, I found out she has cancer, and her treatment requires a lot of money. She has a brain tumor, but the doctors say that it can be removed with surgery. My wife can recover if she gets timely treatment. That's why I desperately need money. In my worried state, I told her everything. She smiled softly and said, "I can really help you if you come work for me." I asked, "Madam, please tell me what the boss is." I had a glimmer of hope in my heart. Maybe this job could help me earn some extra money. I was in such a condition that if someone asked me to dig a hole, I would have done that too. For Mehwish's life, I was willing to sell myself. The woman gently said, "Come to my bungalow at 10 p.m. tonight. I'll explain the job to you in detail and we'll also decide your salary." Hearing this, I glanced at my watch in surprise. It was 6 in the evening and she was asking me to come at 10 p.m. But I didn't refuse. I said, "All right, I have 2 more tuitions to give and then I'll come to you." She seemed pleased and said, "I'm heading out now for some urgent work. Otherwise, I would have talked to you right away." I replied, "No problem, madam. I'll come at night." Then I got out of her car and rode away on my motorcycle. I taught at 2 more places that evening, but the thought of that 35-year-old woman stayed with me the whole time. She wasn't extremely beautiful. She had a dusky complexion and a solid build. She looked like she could be a mother of 2, but she had said she had no children. So what kind of help could she possibly need from me? For a long time, I kept thinking about what kind of job she might offer me. Would the salary be reasonable or not? Then it occurred to me, most rich women have a passion for speaking English. Maybe she wanted to hire me to teach her English, because my English was quite good. I was already tutoring some students in English. A lot of thoughts were going through my mind, and along with them, my hope kept growing. I thought, if the job is good, even if it requires long hours, I'll take it, because what my wife needed wasn't my time, but my money. She needed treatment at any cost. Whenever she had those sharp pains in her head, she would bang her head against the wall. Watching my wife in such a condition made my heart weep tears of blood. The girl I had loved more than life itself was slipping away from me, and I was willing to do anything to save her. I just didn't want to lose her. Her family wasn't wealthy enough to afford her treatment either. And my mother, for this very reason, kept telling me again and again to divorce her and get remarried. "Why have you taken on so much burden in your life?" she would say. "You work yourself to death from morning to night teaching, and even then her treatment can't be done. On top of that, she creates a ruckus in the house when her headaches strike." You see, whenever my wife had an episode of pain, she would start screaming. It was beyond what she could bear. My mother, who had never been happy with my marriage to begin with, had now openly taken a stand against my wife. In such a difficult time when I needed my mother's prayers the most, she had instead taken a position like an enemy, increasing the stress in my life. By the time I finished my 2 tuitions, it was already around 9 p.m. The DHA area was quite far, so I raced there quickly on my motorcycle. When I reached the woman's bungalow, the security guard immediately led me into the drawing room. I was surprised to see that he didn't even ask who I was. Perhaps the guard had already been informed of my arrival. A little while later, the woman entered wearing a beautiful sari, her face heavily made up, and sat down on the sofa in front of me. She still had that faint smile on her face as she said, "Do tell me your name. I never got a chance to ask you earlier." I quickly told her, signed, "My name is Shahab, and I've been tutoring children in the bungalow next door for quite some time." She smiled and said, "Yes, I've seen you come and go, so I'm familiar with you. The guard told me you tutor their children, but I didn't know your name. Well, now we'll get to know each other properly." As she spoke, she continuously played with her gold rings, and I couldn't help but notice her wealth. Looking at this house and the luxurious bungalow, I was certain this woman had no shortage of money. She was wearing 3 thick gold chains around her neck, and I had never imagined there could be so much gold worn like that in a house. I asked, "Madam, please tell me why you called me here?" She glanced at the drawing room door. There was no one around, and then she stood up, walked over, and sat next to me on the sofa. In a very soft voice, she said something that made my world come crashing down. For a long time, I just stared at her in shock, unable to process her words. I then stood up in panic and said, "Madam, what are you saying?" She smiled and replied, "Sit down. Why are you so worried? I haven't said anything unusual." She took my hand and gently pulled me back onto the sofa, adding, "It's a 24-hour job. Whenever you want to go home, I'll let you. You just have to fulfill my wish." I looked at her in disbelief. She seemed very composed and intelligent, but after hearing her words, it felt as though she had lost her mental balance. I just stared at her, unable to comprehend but she was still smiling. Then she leaned in closer to me, and the scent of her expensive perfume overwhelmed my senses. Softly, she whispered, "My husband is not worth much, but he is a very wealthy businessman. He tries to hide his inadequacies and doesn't want anyone to know that he's not capable of satisfying me." She continued, "I also come from a poor family. Out of necessity, I married him, as he supported my family. But now, after 10 years of marriage, loneliness is killing me. My husband understands my condition, which is why he has given me permission to keep whoever I want. I am hiring you for this job with his consent. Whenever I need you, I want you to fulfill my wishes. I need a strong, handsome man like you who can fully satisfy my desires. I've been incomplete for a long time, and I can't continue living like this. I also want children. How long will I remain alone? My husband is not capable of satisfying me, and only I and he know this. Today, I am trusting you enough to tell you this. Whatever salary you ask for, you will get it. Tell me, how much do you earn from teaching at school and tutoring? I will give you the same salary and have an extra money. I will personally take care of your wife's treatment, but you will have to fulfill my wishes according to my desires. I know what poverty feels like, and I understand how much you are suffering for your wife. That's why I want to help you. You can ease your troubles if you fulfill my wish. I will help you eliminate your biggest problem in life." She looked at me with deep, intense eyes, and I just stared at her in disbelief. I never imagined that she would be asking me for such a thing. I couldn't even fathom hearing such words from a woman. She had so easily laid out her desires before me as if it was nothing wrong. Meanwhile, I was shaking in fear from head to toe, hearing her words. With all my personal problems, my mind had already been paralyzed. My wife's illness had taken my senses away. I had no money for her medicine, and I had come here thinking that maybe she would offer me more tutoring jobs and I could take an advance from her. But the situation had completely turned upside down. I immediately shook my head and said, "Madam, I can't do this. My wife is a sick woman." I couldn't deceive her. This was wrong. It was sinful. As I said this, I stood up. Upon hearing my words, Madame laughed and said, "If you can't deceive her, then what? Can you watch her die? You need money for her treatment, right?" Madame opened her purse, pulled out several thousand rupees, and placed them on the table. "Look, this money can buy her medicine. Spend 2 hours with me and then leave. Don't tell your wife. Just say you come to teach me English." Saying this, she laughed loudly, and I looked away, avoiding her gaze. My eyes briefly glanced at the money on the table. This amount could easily cover a week's worth of medicine for my wife, but the price I would have to pay in exchange for this money was something I could never do. I was an honest man, and I had never done anything immoral. I loved Mahuish and had married her with all my heart, so how could I even think about having an improper relationship with another woman? She must have read my expressions and said softly, "Are you afraid of illicit relations?" I nodded quickly in agreement. She continued, "Then let's make it lawful." I was shocked by her words. She went on, "My husband isn't really a man, and to cover his inadequacies, he has kept me confined here. If I ask him for a divorce, he'll give it to me easily. We have no relationship between us anyway." She continued, "I can marry you then, and it will be lawful for you. But this marriage won't have any legal standing. I will still be my husband's wife legally because I don't want to give up his wealth. It has made my family's life better, and it has freed me from poverty. With this wealth, I'll help you solve your problems. As your wife, I can also have children, and I'll give them the name of my first husband, Jalaluddin. This way, my life will be more peaceful." She said this with complete assurance, and I was stunned by her audacity. Then she added, "Think about it. This money could be of great use to you." She weighed bundles of notes in front of me, and I stood up. "Madam, I need time to think," I said. She replied, "I know your answer will be yes. I can clearly see the love you have for your wife in your eyes. If you want to get her treatment, then listen to me." I looked away, and she extended the bundle of money toward me. "Take this money for your wife's medicine and come tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. I will take the divorce from my husband by then, and I will marry you in his presence. After that, you can spend a few hours with me. Leave behind wasting time teaching tuition here and there. She handed me the notes, and I silently accepted them and left, heading towards the door. My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. Just then, one of her servants called out to me and stopped me near the door. He came over to me and said, "I have heard everything between you and Madam. I know how distressed you are. I have been seeing you come and go from the neighboring house for a while. If you listen to my advice, you should accept Madam's offer. Your husband is really not up to the mark, and Madam is a very good woman. But because of him, she suffers. If you marry her, your wife's treatment will be taken care of, and after the marriage, no sin will remain." The servant gave me this advice sincerely before walking away. I began my journey home, the wind slapping my face as I drove, and my thoughts swirling with confusion. I couldn't decide whether to value my wife's life or my loyalty to her. When I reached home, the house was filled with my wife's screams. My mother was sitting, holding her head in her hands and saying, "Take her to a mental asylum or give her a lethal injection. At least I'll be free from her screams." I immediately placed my wife in a rickshaw and rushed her to the hospital. The doctor said, "Surgery is essential right now. You need to make arrangements as soon as possible." I immediately admitted my wife and told the doctor to begin preparations for the surgery. Just yesterday, I prepared to get my wife's surgery done. The doctor admitted her and began overseeing the procedures, while my wife, Mawish, in a state of unconscious distress, said, "Shabazz, how will we arrange so much money? It's better if you just give me a poison injection." Seeing the tears in her eyes shattered my heart. In that moment, I decided I wouldn't just stand by her as a loyal husband. I'd pledge my own dignity to save her life. I reassured Mawish, "Don't worry, I've found work at a big place. You'll see, everything will be all right." Her eyes lit up with hope. I stayed awake by her side all night, and by the next afternoon I was at that bungalow. I married that woman on the spot, and in return, she gave me 200,000 rupees. The 2 hours I spent with her were the most agonizing of my life. My mind was tormented by the image of my suffering wife, while my body was with this woman, who clawed at me mercilessly. Somehow I fulfilled her demands, took the money, and rushed to the hospital. That night, my wife underwent a lengthy surgery. For 2 days, she remained unconscious. When she finally woke, I received the good news. She would recover completely. While she was still hospitalized, I kept leaving to console that wealthy woman, tending to her whims. 15 to 20 days passed like this until my wife was discharged. Her recovery silenced even my mother's objections. I told Mawish I'd landed a good job with uncertain hours. She didn't protest. She knew everything I did was for her. Even now, I visit that rich woman's bungalow to comfort her. Gradually, I learned that in DHA, many women are unhappy with their husbands, and like her, keep young men like me on a paid contract. It might sound disgraceful, but this is the ugly truth of today's world. I do this job out of sheer desperation, but at least my conscience is clear. Our relationship is halal, bound by marriage. Tell me, do you know what really goes on inside the lavish bungalows of DHA and other elite societies? The men and women there, what filthy sins are they entangled in? Have you heard stories like mine? Share your thoughts in the comments.